Alright everyone, now for my next invention. So my next invention is a way to try and run engines for free with no outside energy source being used. And theoretically this is possible. There's just going to be a lot of obstacles to overcome, but I know if we work together we could definitely figure it out. And it's not impossible by any means. It's just a matter of being able to put the time and money and research into this. But theoretically this checks out, and we should be able to basically convert our combustible engines to possibly do this, and run it almost just like a combustible engine the way it is now. So I guess I need to go over the way a combustion engine works. Is that the piston is in a cylinder and it goes up and down in the cylinder, and at the top of the stroke, at the top, gas is squirted in from the fuel injection or older carburetor or whatever. It squirts in there, and then the spark plug ignites it, and it creates an explosion in there. And that explosion in that cylinder that's all sealed perfectly forces that piston down. And when that explosion forces that piston down, it's a lot of pressure and a lot of compression. And so at the bottom, when that piston comes down, there's a shaft at the bottom, and that shaft is what runs through your transmission and then goes down your drive shaft and to your axle and is dispersed to your wheels. And so that's how cars basically run, is that the explosion of the compression engine forces it down the road. So at the top of the stroke where the gas squirts in, it explodes, and then at the bottom, that's how the exhaust comes out, because when it comes down at the bottom of the stroke, it lets the air escape and go out your exhaust, and that's why it's all smelly and hot, because it's the exploded fire, a burnt gas, and it's coming out your exhaust. So it has somewhere to escape, all that pressure escapes, and then the piston goes back up, squirts gas back in, and does it. And there's, however many cylinders you got, 4, 6, 8, and that a bunch of sequence of explosions happening, and they just kind of feed off each other, and that's how it all works. So I guess in theory, if you replace the explosion, all you need is the compression from some source to push that piston down. So theoretically, it doesn't have to be an explosion. Any way you can force that piston down with lots of pressure will turn your everything else, and that's the force, the driving force of everything is the pressure in the cylinder. So that's why we use gas, is because of an explosion, and it just uses gas and it burns it all up and comes out the exhaust. So what I'm trying to do is figure out how to run that engine without using any outside source and recirculating. And what I've come up with is that you could just modify it a little bit and run it off hydraulics. And so like a skid steer or an excavator, those all run off of hydraulics. There's major hydraulic pumps in there that have a lot of pressure, and they turn the wheels and make the skid steers or whatever machinery work. And those are actually the wheels and stuff, and everything turns off of hydraulic pressure. And so that's what runs a lot of stuff in these machineries and machinery and stuff like that. So the pressure on an excavator from a hydraulic pump is around 4,000 pounds psi. So 4,000 psi is what just a moderate hydraulic pump can produce. The engine, like the compression, I know is like 100, usually around somewhere in there. I'm not the best mechanic in the world. I haven't done too many compression tests or messed with any of that, but theoretically the pressure that a hydraulic pump produces is way more than it takes to run the engine and the explosion that's happening in the cylinder. I was seeing somewhere where the explosion might create 1,500 psi. So even if it does create 1,500 psi, 5,000 that the hydraulic pump is producing is way more than the 1,500 that the internal combustion engine is producing. So theoretically, if we ran pistons off hydraulic fluid, it would be much, much more power. You would think. You think we'd be able to get more power out of it, and it would be efficient because it would use zero gas. What you could do is run your hydraulic lines and just pull out the spark plugs and run hydraulic lines to them and bore it out bigger to where the main thing is going to be able to get the fluid to go through so quick. But the way it's set up, I think it wouldn't take much to modify it, but just make it where it can get in there fast. And you'd probably have to drill stuff out and make larger holes, but run hydraulic lines to each cylinder and recirculate it back. So when the hydraulic fluid comes out the exhaust, have it go into a container and pump that container right back up to the container that fuels the hydraulic pump. And then at that point, you have an engine that's running off nothing but oil that recirculates, and it will never use anything. It's an engine that we could put in all of our cars and just basically take the same combustion engine and run it off hydraulic fluid and use no fuel whatsoever. You would just have to slightly modify it, but the hydraulic pump should be able to keep up and pump it all out. But theoretically, the hydraulic pump should be able to keep up and pump it all out. So at this point, you have an engine that is running off nothing but hydraulic fluid with no outside source, and it's perpetual. It runs forever. You may ask, well, how are you going to disperse the hydraulic fluid in a manner to keep it going? Because you got to alternate from each piston. You follow me? The firing order, if you will, basically like a distributor. So what you would do is put in some kind of circular thing, and with maybe, like, if it's an 8-cylinder, have 8 holes all the way around it, and where that, because that's in septics, this is kind of a thing they do when they switch lines. There's just a thing that revolves and it switches to where it'll let go to each one. And so you just do the same thing and just make something that spins and allows it to go. I mean, if you spun it real fast like this and it was going real fast, I mean, however many revolutions per minute, 7,000, or if you want to go that fast or whatever, but even 2,000 revolutions per minute of that, and just sending hydraulic fluid to each cylinder. If you just had like a circle thing with lines, or with hydraulic lines going to each cylinder, to each spark plug, and it's just on the inside, it only sends fluid to each one, and it just spins, and it just has the ability to. That's going to be the tricky part to engineer, is going to be the distributor that distributes the hydraulic fluid to each cylinder. But it's totally doable. I mean, it's going to take a lot of research and trial and error, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, if somebody had a shop and a fabricator, I mean, you guys, I know there's guys out there that could engineer something like this in a week. And that right there would change everything. I mean, especially a couple guys who really knew what they were doing. I mean, this is not out of the realm of reality. Theoretically, this all checks out, and there ain't no reason why this wouldn't work. So, yeah, we could be powering and running cars right now off of nothing but hydraulic fluid, and just perpetually running everywhere and never using any energy whatsoever. So, I think it's possible. I think we can do it, and that's just my newest idea that I'm releasing to try and help the world. So I'm just releasing these ideas. I'm worried about where the world's headed, so I'm trying to help the world in every way I can. I'm giving away ideas, hoping they feed off each other, and that we can just do something to make this world a little bit better. So I appreciate y'all keeping up. I want to release inventions like this once a week. I got comedy stories. I talk philosophy. Do all kinds of wild stuff in this world, but please like, subscribe, keep up. I appreciate y'all. Thanks.